So this is the second lesson from Unit 10. Last lesson we looked at GCF with just two numbers, and our homework was based on doing factor trees. And today we're going to look at what happens if we have algebraic terms as well. So if I gave you something like x squared and x to the 5, if you try writing out what it means, which is what you did last time, it just means x times x. X to the 5th just means x times x times x times x times x. So if we circle the ones that are the same, well, we've got an x and an x, another x and an x, then the GCF, remember you times those two things together, x times x would just be x squared. Now you can write it out like that. There is a slightly shorter way of doing it as well. What we're just going to do is we're going to go with the lowest power. So if I have a power of 2 and a power of 5, then the lowest power is just 2, so my GCF I could just say is x to the 2. The reason I want to do that is, if I had this as a question, x to the 31 and x to the 71, what I don't want to do is write x times x times x times 31 times. So we can go with the lowest power, and we can just say straight away the GCF of these two things is just x to the power of 31. So if I give you something slightly more complicated, say like that, then we just look at each term in turn. So w cubed, w squared, go with the lowest power, w squared. I got x cubed and x. Now remember, if there's no power there, it just means it's to the power of 1. So I got x to the 3, x to the 1, one with the lowest power is x to the 1. I can put the 1 there if I wanted to, I'm just going to leave it as x. Now I got y to the power of 1, and actually I don't have any y on this side, so actually that could be written as y to the 0. So the lowest one would just be y to the 0, so actually I don't need any y's at all. So unless I have the same letter on both sides, I'm not going to take that as my factor. Moving on to the last one, Moving on to our last one, I got z to the 4 and I have z to the 4. So which is the smallest? Well actually in this case they're both the same, so actually I'm just going to say it's z to the 4. So a couple of special rules. If you have 1 on one side but not on the other side, that means that it's not a factor. If we have the same number, then that just means that's the number that we're going to go with. And hopefully that agrees with my answer that I just had. I then give a little puzzle for people to try, see if they could fill in the missing blanks. So you might want to pause the video and try this, and then see if you agreed with the answers. So for x, I got x to the 3 and x to the 2, and the lowest power there is 2. Y to the 7, y to the 3, lowest number, 3. Z to the 5, z to the 5, same thing again, same number, so we're just going to go with that number. And on the second one I threw in a couple of extra tricks here. And I have a numbers this time as well, so 9 and 15, which times table are they both in? 3 times table. And this time I've actually got to do some simplifying before I work this out. So power to a power, that's when we multiply these together. And over here I put these terms in a strange order, so I've got to do y cubed times y to the 4. So when you multiply, you add the exponents together. So if I was to do the GCF now, x to the 8, x to the 10, the smallest one is just x to the 8, and y to the 8 and y to the 7, the smallest one is y to the 7. And actually we played a little game on here to try and figure out if we could figure out what the song is. I think the first note's wrong, but let's have a little try anyway. So our answers were 2, 3, 5, 3, 8, 7. So it was supposed to be happy birthday anyway. Now, we move then on to some slightly simpler examples, and sometimes the simple ones cause more problems. So this time, there's no s's on both sides, so we can ignore that part. There is a factor with the numbers here though. So the GCF of 2 and 12 is 2. They're both in the 2 times table. Now, if we're factoring and not just finding the GCF, we have to do a little bit more. We have to say, what do we times together to make this thing here? So we've got to write it as like your factor tree question. So what we say is, what do we times 2 by to give us 2s? The answer is just s. We can see we already have a 2. The only thing we don't have is an s. Now for the numbers, 2 times what gives us 12? That's just going to be 6. Now I'm going to show you a second way to do this in a second if you prefer that, but this is the preferred way, but sometimes people struggle, and I'll show you another way of getting to the answer. Now for this one here, 12 and 18, you might spot that they're both in the 2 times table, and you would be right. So 2 times 6 gives me 12, and I can see I need a t here as well, because 2 times 6t is 12t. And then 2 times 9 gives me 18. Now, the only problem with this question is it should really say fully factor. And actually I've missed a factor, because if I go back in here, I can see that both of these have a factor of 3 as well. So 3 times 2t would give me 6t, and 3 times 3 would give me 9. And if I simplify this at the start, I can see that I get 6. Now this is one you've got to be very careful of in the SOL, because they will give you answers that aren't fully factored as option choices. What I really should have done is not just taken 2 as the factor, I should have taken 6. Both of these numbers are in the 6 times table, and if I'd have done that, I would have said 6 times 2 gives me 12, and I'd still need a t, and 6 times 3 equals 18. So make sure you take out the biggest factor when you're doing these questions, or it can get a little more complicated. Now a couple more with some extra letters for this one. Now for this one, I could put 1 at the start if that helps us. And there is no GCF for 3 and 1, it's just 1, which is no use to us. So I'm looking for letters that are the same. Well, I can see that there's an A on here. I got A to the 1, and I got A to the 2. So I go with the one with the lowest power. It's just going to be A. Now, what do I need to multiply A by to give me 3AB? Well, I already have the A. What I don't have is a 3 and a B. So I need that. What do I times A by to get A squared? A times A is A squared. That's one of the factors we should know. Our last one. You can also check these answers by distributing as well, which people are normally pretty good at. Is this times this, this? Is this times this, this? So make sure you do that little check as well. 6 and 2, I can see they're both in the 2 times table. And all I can see if there are any letters the same. Well, I got A and A here. Power of 2, power of 1. So we go with the lowest power. And then we just got to make sure, what do we times 2A by to get that expression up there? Well, 2 times 3 gives me 6. A times what gives me A squared? A. I can also say I need a B, which I don't have here. So I got my little B here. Once again, if we just check, 2 times 3 is 6. A times A is A squared, and then we've got our B there. This one on the end often causes problems. 2A times my what gives you 2A, because it's the same thing. So this one is actually just 1, because 2 times 1 is 2, and then there's our A. Now I said I would show you an alternative way of doing this question, and I will. We could write 2s as 2 times s. We could write 12 as 2 times 2 times 3. And then we look to see what is the same from both. So 2, and that's where this comes from. And then what do I have left? S. What do I have left? 2 times 3, which is 6. Now it takes a little longer to write these out, but it will also guarantee you get the correct answer. So if I did this for 12, I could go 2 times 2 times 3 times t, and for 18 I know that's 2 times 3 times 3. I notice that there's a 2 the same, and I notice that there is a 3 the same. So that would be my 6. What do I have left over? 2t and 3. So it's a very visual way of doing this question, and for that reason, if you are struggling on the first method I showed you, that will definitely get you to the right answer. Perhaps more usefully for the algebra ones, 3ab just means 3ab. A squared is A times A. So I've got an A on both. What do I have left? 3b. What do I have left? A. So a very quick method for doing the ones with algebra. 6a squared b. A squared means A times A. And then I need a b. 6 I should factor as well. 6 is 2 times 3. So what do I see the same? 2 and an A, and this is where I've got to be a little careful because it looks like I've cancelled everything out and I've got nothing left. So I could write 2 though as 2 times 1, so I'm going to put a 1 back there. So I got 2A, I got that part done. What do I have left? 3AB. What do I have left? 1. So that second method is a very good way of actually coming up with a correct answer. It's not going to work when we get to the more complicated questions, but if you need something to sort of help you on these first few questions, that might be something you might want to consider as well.